What's up? We are live in our December to Member events. We're going to try something new tonight, but everything went to shambles when I went to start it. So we are talking about the good book tonight. Not that good book. Not that good book, but this good book, okay? We're talking about wiring diagrams, how to read them, why they matter, why you should care, those sort of things. So what I had planned, what I had going on was I had my cell phone out. I'm using my streaming software. We are live on Facebook and YouTube again. Okay. And the idea was that this camera was going to stay here and I could draw things up here if I needed to. You can slide that back a little bit. Okay. But also I'll have my camera on my phone to be able to show you guys use it as a guest on my software here to be able to actually show you zoomed in, you know, the pages of the diagrams in that. And as I was getting ready to go live and as I was testing everything, I think we lost a cell tower around here or something because I have like no signal, no internet. So I messaged Earl to get the Wi-Fi password. And so that, yeah, I can connect this Wi-Fi and then everything will work like it should. So we're going to talk for a little bit while I'm waiting to get that text and to get that password, which actually this might be it right here. Okay. Nope. That was a different text. All right. A good, but not what we're looking for text for the show, okay? Now, some of you are going to hate the thought and very idea that you're going to need a wiring diagram at some point, okay? I know a lot of you people, and I don't mean that like derogatorily, but wiring and wiring diagrams and wiring schematics and just the devil spaghetti itself can be exceedingly intimidating for a lot of people. And hopefully we can kind of take some of that intimidation and fear out of it with a few different videos. So today is our last video before we are on our way to PRI. We're leaving tomorrow and headed down. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday is PRI. So pretty excited about that one. We're not going to do any of these wiring how-to videos during that time frame. And then Monday, probably just hang out at my house again. But Tuesday, we're going to come back down. So next Tuesday, we are going to cover the basics of wiring. And what I mean by that is wire size, aka wire gauge, wire construction. What is Tefzel wire? What is TXL? You know, aluminum, copper kind of thing. And then we will try to get into how to connect wires. So crimping, soldering, and crimping on terminals, how to depin connectors, and how to fix that sort of stuff too. So we'll actually do a hands-on for the actual wiring. Now, what might happen with that is we might actually just use the camera that I got and just kind of neck it out over what I'm doing. But we'll see. We'll figure that one out. But we are going to cover the actual like how to fix wiring kind of thing next week. Okay, so before anybody's asking about like, well, which should I use? What should I do? How should I? We will cover that one next week. Okay, we're going to cover kind of the basics tonight. So, yes, Travis says, how to tame the wiring mess. Rip it out and start from scratch. Well, that's the problem, Travis, is that there are so many people that are absolutely terrified to do that. Just terrified to do it. Okay, now, why should you care about a wiring diagram or anything like that? Well, first off, the more you know your car, the better a racer you can be, okay? And I mean this, I don't mean this in necessarily a negative way, but it might come across. But if you purchase a wiring diagram for somebody and you purchase somebody puts a cage in your car and somebody sets your car up and somebody builds your motor and somebody puts it all together and somebody hangs a body on it for you and you sort of just tow the thing to the racetrack, you can be a really, really great driver and you can win races, but it's going to be a lot harder if something goes wrong to be able to diagnose and fix and to just sort of maintain your car, okay? So if you are doing your own wiring, or at least know how to do your own wiring, you're going to be a lot better off than just, hey man, I bought a harness here, I threw it in, it solved my problem, right? Which, look, that might be the way to go. Your harness you got now might be so messed up, that might be the best way to go. might be the only way for you to go, right? My race cars, I run a standalone computer, like an aftermarket standalone computer. So I start from scratch with a what they call a flying lead harness. And the idea is that it has the connector and it just has, I think mine come with 12 foot of wire, and that's it. So I will go through and I will, technically, it comes with the connectors and it comes with the wires. So I actually put the wires that are pre-pinned into the connector so I don't have to remove them. So I only put in what I need, and then I go through and I route them how I want them to be. I hook up everything on the other end that I want it to be. So for me, if I paid somebody else to do that, I might not know what wires are ran where, or what colors are ran where, or why something's ran the way it is. And if I start trying to chase problems, I might not understand that my cylinder 1 and cylinder 4 are connected because of power wire, power issue through the coils, something to that effect. Okay. Yeah, need power and ground. That's my extent of wiring knowledge. So yeah, Matthew, we are live on YouTube right now. We are live on YouTube and Facebook right now. Okay. So wait, hopefully the big guy sees my text and we can actually do this the way I was hoping to, right? Now, wiring diagrams, my goal is to actually be able to show you guys the wiring diagram. Yeah, I still have 1 bar of signal where I normally here have 4G plus 4 bars. So I don't know what happened that is not letting it. Yeah, and I've tried restarting my phone. Everything. So I don't know, right? Wiring diagrams, you can get them in places like a Chilton's manual. You can get them in places like a factory service manual. A lot of times you can go to online sources. So in the state of Michigan, we have the Michigan Electronic Library, and they have, the name is escaping me. There's one of the repair online deals that you can look up, and you can actually look it up through there, through the library, without paying a fee. Okay. You might have, the wiring diagram, you can Google them and find them different places. They're available in a lot of different places, but I'm going to tell you guys, gals, if you are racing, I will tell you exactly what you need to buy, and it is the factory service manual for your car. Okay. So this one happens to be for a 97 Neon. We actually own 95 through 99, okay? And not only are these the best for the wiring diagrams, but they are the best for literally everything else. Every torque spec you need for your car is inside here. You want to rebuild an engine, there is a 50-page section on rebuilding your engine. Here's for the brakes. Here's for your differential. Here's for the suspension, okay? Everything that you want to know about your car is in here, right? Now, the wiring diagram, here is something that I want to point out, and I try to get this point across. Now, the wiring part of this one does include things like the headlights, the taillights, your horns, the audio system, different things like that, right? However, the Chilton's book, which I'm about to show you next, also includes all of those things, okay? So, I'm going to go back a couple pages here. This is the section of the factory service manual that is wiring, okay? For comparison, it is almost as thick as the entire Chilton's manual. Okay. The only thing in here, in this section right here, is wiring diagrams, splice, and like ground locations, connector pinouts. That's it. That's the only thing available in this section. Okay. Whereas this entire book contains everything else that's in here. Okay. Not quite as good either, right? This is also done for a 95 through 99. 95 Neon had a little bit different wiring than a 97 and a 99 Neon. Okay, minor differences, right? The thing is, though, is that a 95 PCM has a completely different shape, completely different pinout. So by having that in a factory service manual, makes things so much quicker and easier, whereas this is going to just have a generalization. The wire color changes for the main ASD output wire in these neons. It goes from green and white to green and orange. If you have this factory service manual for your year, it tells you that. You know that. This Chilton's manual isn't going to say that. It's going to pick one of them and go from there. Okay. So let's go ahead and find it here. Okay. So chassis electrical. So we will assume that that is part of it too. So chassis electrical. Yep. So this is it. This is your entire wiring for the Chilton's manual. There's 46 pages, and that's it. Okay. Looks like we might be doing this thing the old-fashioned way. Okay. Okay. In Michigan, you could probably find the original dude that designed wiring the manufacturer. Funny enough, I've actually ran into engineers that have done different parts of the cars. So, okay, so we are going to attempt to start this thing out. I'm going to come back here to the wiring diagram basics, which has this fancy little chart right here. Okay. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to probably screw up the computer or screw up the camera, but I'm going to zoom you guys in some. And it might just mean that I have to carry you farther forward. So turn the display back on. Okay. Hopefully that didn't mess anything up. Turn the display off so the battery lasts longer. All right, yeah, we can make this work. Cool. Okay. Hopefully you can see this a little bit better. All right. Don't worry, I'll try to show you the best I can as I'm waiting on let's see if I get the Wi-Fi password, right? Now, this diagram, there's 2 rows here, and it shows you what all the symbols mean that are going to be used in all of this wiring stuff, okay? So, for example, we'll draw this up here just because, well, I can't show you with the other camera. I'll tell you what, I'm getting a little bit warm, so if my hair is all goofy, I apologize, okay? Well, let's see if purple shows up. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the front of the book, yeah, Doug, it just says factory service manual, okay? If you guys go on eBay, I should put that out, a factory service manual, if you guys go on eBay and just search for your year and then make and model, some people even have these where they've been digitized, so it's just like a PDF that you could print off if you wanted. I have seen these as low as $15 to $20. It depends on your car, how rare it is, things like that, okay? Even at $100, they are worth every penny because it isn't just this wiring diagram, okay? It is engine specs, it is torque specs for your transmission, it is, so like your alignment specs are in here. It tells you how to do a compression test, okay? Because it doesn't just give you the diagrams. It actually gives you diagnostics. Like these pages here, right? Here is intermittent and poor connections. It tells you how to look for them. Checking for terminal spreading, testing for voltage, testing for short to ground on fuses powering several loads, testing for voltage drop, troubleshooting wiring problems, the service procedures as far as wiring care or wire repair. It's showing you here how to do things. There's so much more than just some wiring diagrams, okay? So the important things that you are going to want to know if you are reading a wiring diagram, okay? The first couple should be kind of self-explanatory, but you'll need to know the difference between 2 of them. If you have a symbol that looks like that, I assume you guys know what that means. That is your positive. That's your battery positive. That's your red terminal, okay? If you have this, that is your negative or the negative side of your battery. Now I say negative because as far as wiring diagrams go, you typically don't get a lot of negative, but what you do get is a symbol that's going to look something like this. There might be different versions of it slightly, but that means it's a ground, okay? The different versions that they use in here that they don't actually show up here in the beginning for these diagrams is that they will show it, but it looks slightly different, okay? So it has that cross T still, but it has a dark circle there. What that is meaning is that it is part of a splice, okay? So it's not just one ground, going back to a ground. It means that there are going to be multiple grounds all tied together at some point in the wiring run, okay? So if you see this symbol or this symbol, that means ground, okay? Negative and ground are different, but for our purposes, they're essentially the same thing, because the negative, your ground has to go back to the negative side of the battery, okay? The system has to be closed. Your sensor grounds and stuff like that is where things get a little iffy, but we're trying to make this clear and concise, and yeah. Okay. Ooh, I might have signal now. Okay, we're gonna see. This might actually work now. So if it does, you'll have to bear with me just a moment, but this will be so much better if so, because I can actually show you what it is that I am talking about. So, okay, we will mute it. All right, well, we're halfway there. Let's see if this thing actually reads. And of course, as soon as I pick it up and as soon as I do that, the signal goes away. That is frustrating and aggravating. Okay. I don't know what's up with that. So if we can get on the Wi-Fi, if any of you are watching, you have Earl's number, just text him. Say, hey, send Ted the Wi-Fi password. Okay. So these ones are the major ones that you need to know. Okay. Positive, negative, and ground. Spliced ground, regular ground. Okay. The next thing that you're going to want to know, and this one is sort of important, is a fuse. Now, I am not good at drawing, but it effectively looks like that inside of a diagram, okay? They will typically be followed with the amp rating of that fuse. So like if it was this and it said 20A, that would mean you have a 20 amp fuse, okay? A lot of diagrams, especially for like the factory service manual, will actually show it inside of a its own little area. There's not a lot of them that are just wild in a wiring diagram, okay? Now, the other thing that you are going to want to really know to be able to read a wiring diagram well is splices, okay? And I know it seems simple because I just showed you one, but this gets overlooked so much and it can cause some serious problems. So a splice is going to have a wire with just a circle, like a black circle. Now, it might have extra wires coming off from it, but it might just show you that circle on the wire that you're looking at. Now, if it's doing that, the other thing that it's going to do is it is going to give you the splice identification, or at least it should, okay? So if I have this splice on this wire, right, it should say S109, okay? Something to that effect. So on my wiring diagram, I can flip the pages and go back here to the splices section, and I can look up splice 109, and it should have in the center of that page, it'll have that dot, and then it'll say that it goes up here to this thing, and it goes up here to this thing, and it goes over here to this thing, it goes down here to this thing, and it goes over here to this thing, and it goes over here to this thing, and it shows you where every leg of that splice goes. Now, the reason why this matters is because you might not have a problem with the circuit that you actually think you do, okay? So, for example, in a Dodge Neon, because again, it's what I race, that's what these are, okay? Your cam sensor, your crank sensor, your coolant temp sensor, they are all fed off from the same 8-volt line. Okay, your map sensor as well and your TPS. Okay, so you have your TPS, your crank, your cam, your coolant temp, your map sensor. Okay, and they're all fed off from the same signal. Okay, so they all have this 8-volt signal wire or power wire going to them. Okay, but if I am having issues where the cam sensor or the crank sensor isn't picking up, it could be because my coolant sensor has a short in it and it's draining this 8-volt wiring. Okay, so I'm only getting 3 or 4 volts over to here for the crank sensor. Okay, well, if I read this, if I go in and I grab my ohm meter and I'm checking it and I see, oh man, I've only got 3 volts here, I could assume that something's wrong with the crank wiring. Well, the next thing I personally am going to do, because I already know that this is a problem, I'm going to go to my cam sensor. I'm going to see if I have 8 volts here. And if I have the 3 volts, okay, well, now I'm going to start checking these other sensors too. And if everything has a problem, but I go back to the PCM and the PCM is putting 8 volts out, that means I have a short somewhere. So what I would try to do is I would stick my probe here, and I'm going to start unplugging these, okay? Because there's a chance that maybe the coolant sensor is grounded internally, right? Now, realistically, if that was the case, I should have, if I unplug this to test it, I probably should have that 8 volts. But for the sake of the argument, it didn't, right? But if I unplug this and all of a sudden, bam, I get 8 volts here, well, that means I got a problem with the coolant temp sensor, okay? But my PCM might not have thrown a crank sensor code and my coolant temp sensor code. My coolant temp sensor also, it's not going to stop my vehicle from starting. Like if the temperature's not right, it's just going to account for it. So this might have been bad and I didn't notice until it dropped the voltage on my crank. So knowing that all of these are spliced together can help me diagnose what the issue is, right? Because otherwise, I'm just going to say, oh man, I don't have a crank sensor signal. I don't know what the problem is, right? So a splice is a really, really big one to note. Now, you can have a splice on the voltage side or the ground side, okay? Because automakers really, really, really like to splice grounds together, okay? Because if I'm going to run one ground somewhere, I don't want to like say I've got, if each one of those things, if there's 5 things and each one of them needs a ground, which they do, they need a sensor ground. But say all of those need grounded to bare metal, something metallic, say the engine or whatever. I don't want to have 5 individual, rings that need 5 different locations to bolt to. I want to put those on one bolt with one ring and one location and make it dummy proof almost, right? So that splice can occur almost anywhere in it, but they really like to splice grounds. So in the case of a Neon as well, the coils and the coil pack and the fuel injectors all share a common 12-volt feed as well. So they also have a splice on them, right? Are we going to see you bust out an oscilloscope? No, we're not getting that in depth. I don't even own an oscilloscope. If I get into trying to chase something down that hard, I've got some real problems, okay? Now, there are other ones that they have in here, like a gang fuses with a bus bar, circuit breakers, capacitors, ohms, resistors, diodes, or rectifiers. They even have the actual what it looks like for a single filament lamp, a dual filament lamp, a LED, fuel injector, things like that. So by having a factory service manual, it will show you what all of the symbols are that are going to be used later. Okay. Now, another thing that is really, really, really good about these factory service manuals, and one reason that I really love them, is that in a factory application, this is the fuse block inside of the like under the hood, the under hood fuse block. Now I've deleted these. I haven't ran one of these since 2009. Okay, but if you have a factory wiring, this shows you what each fuse is. It shows you this diagram on this side is actually the underside. So this one shows you where all the relays are and the fuses for that block. But on the underside, it shows you what each individual pin is. And then it might be a little hard for you guys to see. Well, sort of. So right here, you can see how that's darker. That's because these are bussed together in the fuse block. So those are likely your power and your grounds. So you're going to have one big power coming in. It's going to feed power to all of those things. So all of the power for those relays is all interconnected, okay? But it shows you that. The other thing that it does is it has a number on each individual pin cavity. And underneath that, it shows you the cavity, and then it shows you the circuit that it's involved with and the function that it does. So you have your cavity, you have the circuit, and you have the function that it does, right? So, for example, pin number 13, you've got M1 is your circuit. It's an 18 gauge. It's a pink wire. It's a fused B positive, okay? If you go down lower, we've got like, here is the circuit 38 is C25 for the circuit. It is a 14 gauge LG. Light green, and then it's the fan control relay output. Okay. People, I'm getting notifications that aren't texts. Get me excited. Okay. Now the reason that is super nice, right, is that if I still have that factory fuse block and say, man, the car won't start and I keep blowing this fuse, but this fuse says that it's for the fan wiring. Well, I don't have the fans hooked up, right? I can go in, I can pull up which one it is. I can see what cavity it's in. I can see what circuits are involved. And then I can look up by circuit. I can flip back here. I can look up each individual circuit. Now, the kind of neat thing with the factory service manual is that it actually does tell you. So this is the power distribution, so it's the index. So it actually has what each fuse does, what each individual piece does. It shows you what splice is where, okay? So like for this one, if I wanted to be fuse number 7, okay, follow across, it's on page 8W107, right? So I can flip to that page and know exactly what's there, right? Well, I don't use this book as much, so there isn't... it doesn't have the pages that are as dirty, right? But like just for this one is we are at the ground distribution page, okay? So it is going to show us where all of the grounds are. So it's going to tell us your airbag, the battery, engine starter motor relay, and it has a diagram for each one of them that it says, okay? Now, what year book should I get for my car? Doug, honestly, probably a 95, since that's what your PCM is. That's the thing. If you've made a conglomerate of wires, or like the shell's a 95, but the engine's a 98, and the PCM's a 95, and the suspension's a 96, right? Whatever most closely represents your PCM is likely the way to go, okay? So just as a heads up, right? Now, how do you actually read these wiring diagrams? And I'm going to try to find a simple one here that I can write up here on the board for you guys, since I can't. All right, so here's one that might be kind of easy, okay? You're going to have to bear with me. You're going to have to bear with me just for a second. I probably should have picked a different topic and made it where I could actually show you guys this stuff. Or, I guess, let's just walk up there and hope the Zoom doesn't screw up, okay? I think that's what we're going to do. See if I got... I'll use this as a pointer. All right. So this is a wiring diagram. And actually, I tell you what, let me actually switch to All right, here's a good one. Okay, so this is showing so this is for the fuel and ignition system, okay? Hopefully you guys can see this. Let me actually turn my display back on the camera so I can see what you guys are seeing, okay? All right, cool. Make sure this zooms in properly, okay? So this here is the wiring diagram. Up top is your crankshaft position sensor, and it shows you pin number 3, pin number 1, pin number 2. And then these are all the things associated with those circuits. Down here at the bottom is the powertrain control module. Now, it might look a little goofy because it's just a smaller portion here, right? But this is only showing you the pins that have anything to do with the wiring that have to do with the crank position sensor, okay? I'm actually going to tell you what we're going to try to do. So everything might fuzz out for a second, but I promise it'll come back, okay? I am actually going to try and grab the camera and bring it up here and reposition it so that it's pointed down right here. That way I can actually show you guys what we're talking about. You can hopefully see the whole thing, and it's not shaky from me grabbing it. So, yeah, we're going to try that. But if I move this a little too much, sometimes the cord gets a little fuzzy. But I promise you guys, I'll be right back, okay? So don't go anywhere. If something happens, just as a heads up, okay? We're going to try to hold this cord steady. All right. Then, okay, so we're actually going to need to you guys are going to have to stare at the ceiling a second. Just bear with me. It gets better. I promise you. Okay. You know, Todd, this is not what I thought was going to happen tonight. You know what, random person who I am pretending to talk that's talking to me, this is not what I thought was going to happen tonight either. Okay. And there's our book. Okay. So now let's zoom out. Okay. Then we are going to turn this so that you guys can see it. Let me actually grab my light here and bring it over so that hopefully you can see a little better. I got to plug it back in. There we go. Okay. The other thing I think I'll do is to scoot this. That didn't work how I thought exactly, but we'll raise you up some and extend you out a little more. Okay. That way, can be a little bit more centered. And then we're going to hit the focus. Okay. How does that look for everybody? I'm going to look at my screen here. That actually doesn't look too bad. And you know what, Logan? That's okay. Things are going to get a lot better as far as the wiring stuff goes. So, yeah. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you guys I'm looking at this upside down. So, bear with me if I get something slightly wrong. See, my hands are up here. Okay. Now, as I was showing you guys, this is the crankshaft position sensor, right? If I actually come back up here to the beginning, so this one here you see is fuel ignition systems. So this is 8W30. This is page 5, okay? So if I come back here, here is the fuel and ignition system, which is where most of us are going to spend our time in a factory service manual, okay? So as I was saying, you can see here, here's fuel injector number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Now, those all happen to be on the same page, which makes a lot of sense. If I come down here, G101, G signifies that it's a ground, okay? I'll actually, let me... There, try to get that as tight as we can and still let you guys see everything. Pete, I can't see your face. It's so much better. I don't blame you, Pete. I wouldn't look at me if I didn't have to look at me either, you know? Moving my stuff so I can use my stool a little bit here. Okay. Now, the other part of this here, as you can see, being the fuel and ignition systems, right? Solid state fan relay. And it does show you that there's the stop lamp switch, TPS, torque converter, clutch, solenoid. Okay. Other, like if we switch back, if we scroll back, this is our power distribution. Okay. This is that diagram I was just telling you guys about with the fuse block in it. Okay. So again, here's the underside of our fuse block. You can see how here's the power stud with number 70. If you look down here, fuse B plus, right? But that feeds all of these, okay? And then you can see how many of these feed each other, right? So these are all tied together because they have that solid black, but it shows you the cavity that they're in, it shows you the circuit that it is, and the function that it does. So if we flip back over here, okay, these are the power distribution ones, right? But right here is for our fuse block, okay? So our fuse block here is an internal fuse block. So this is the one that is inside the cabin. So it has the fuses, which number it is, the cavity that it's in, okay, and then what it does, right? And you can see here, here's the fuse block, and it tells you what relay is what, and then it shows you the pinouts, okay? So if we flip through and we go back here to our fuel and ignition system, okay? A few of the symbols that they're going to show you, you can see the circles. You can see the circles, the black circles, okay? There's one here, 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 here. Now, what this is showing you is that from over here, this is splice 121, okay? And then those are all part of that splice, okay? It's easier to show you this way than to kind of draw the lines out. But because that wire is all together and it's connected here, then that is the splice that they're all spliced under. So there isn't, there might not be, there actually is not this many different splices. So in a neon, this power splice is actually like 8 wires on one side and 8 wires on the other side, and they all kind of come out of one splice, right? We're dropping viewers yet. Is this even, is anything wrong, or is this just, or am I just boring? Like, I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure I'm boring, okay? Now, as we come down here, you can see fuel injector. So these are the symbols for fuel injector, but it's showing you pin 1 and pin 2. Dark green, orange, circuit A142. 18 is the size of the wire, okay? As you can see, these are all the same. They all come from the same splice, right? Comes from the fuel injector, but from the bottom of the fuel injector, because your fuel injectors in your cars, your car provides them power, and then your PCM actually grounds them. That's how they operate. So you can see here that the color changes. The circuits change. So this is K11, K12, K13, K14. So once it passes through the fuel injector, it changes the circuit and it changes the wire color. So this one is light blue, brown, yellow, and white, tan, and then white and dark blue, okay? The 2 letters signify the color, okay? It's one of those it's kind of difficult sometimes to figure out what it is that they're saying, but it's also easy enough if you look at your wiring harness and see, you know, YL and WT, yellow and white, makes a lot of sense. Now, as you come down to the bottom down here, fuel injector number 4 driver, fuel injector number 3 driver, fuel injector number 2, fuel injector number 1 driver. So these are all driven in the PCM, and they are pins 16, 7, 12, 17, and 13. Okay, that C2 signifies that this is on connector 2. That the like that's the pin in connector C2. Okay. Now for this here, this is also showing this extra little bit, and this is just because it's easy enough to put all of this on the same page, right? So like in that table of index, it's going to show that we have these 4 fuel injectors and we have the ignition coil pack, right? Now, this splice, dark green orange, right? Dark green orange, dark green orange. These are all off the same thing. So these splices are somewhere near each other, okay? Splice 121, 122, 127, right? We come down here, it's A142 with a 14 gauge wire to go to this little noise suppressor. A142 with an 18 gauge wire to go to here, okay? These are all circuit 142. But we come down here to the coil pack, and then off from the coil pack for the ignition coil drivers, we switch K17, K19, and then dark blue, tan, black, and gray, right? The reason that matters, the reason why those colors matter and that circuit number and that matters, if I take this connector off for the coil pack and I want to test if I have 12 volts, it is entirely possible that at some point somebody has screwed up and they changed out these wire colors, or they've just ran different wires, or whatever. If you look at it and these colors don't line up to the pins that they are supposed to, you know that something's wrong with the wiring. And it could be a previous fix. It could be that when somebody put this together, if they switched the 1 and 3 pin, which are the 2 outside pins, you know, this thing's not going to run hardly at all. If they put the dark green orange wire on pin 1 or 3, it isn't going to run at all, right? So being able to look at that color wire, you're going to be able to look at the connector and you're going to say, okay, if I'm having an issue with cylinders 1 and 3, then I know that it should be on this cylinder, okay? Or on this wire on this circuit. So I can go through and I can see that I need a dark blue tan wire, right? I can then follow that wire anywhere through the harness, because it is going to be, that color wire is only going to be used for that purpose, right? So if I see a dark green orange, like in this splice here, okay, I know that if I see a dark green orange practically anywhere in this car, it should be a full 12 volt signal, okay? Because, and it is, that's part of off the ASD relay, right? But if I want to know, say I'm not getting voltage to my fuel injectors, but I am getting it to my coil pack, okay, I might need to know where that splice is. What else is connected on here, right? What all things could be affected by that? The really neat part of this is if I come back up here to my table of contents, I'm looking for splice 121. So I'm going to go S121, and it's going to show me that it's on 8W35, which is this one. So that splice right there. But I also know that splice has 122 and 127. Now, the other neat thing about this, the factory service manual, you'll see here splice 122 shows me 8W1011. Up here is our page number, 8W35. Okay, so 30, 10's obviously before 30. I'm going to go backwards. 8W105. So we needed 11. So now if I go to 11, now this is showing me splice 121. Okay, which let me splice 122. Okay, 122. So off from 122, we have the alternator, O2 sensor, PCM, O2 sensor, fuel injector, fuel injector, fuel injector, fuel injector, coil pack, noise suppressor. Okay, then there's a little capacitor over here. Fuel pump module is off from this. It's not involved with all of that, right? But splice 122 and splice 121 here, 127, right? They all come off from the automatic shutdown relay, which is connector 161, where it goes through. If you see this in the middle of and you see a C, that tells you that you have a connector in that run of wire. So somewhere between here and here is a connector. So it's C161, okay? But I have everything here. All of this comes off from the automatic shutdown relay. All right. So if I'm having an issue and I don't have 12 volts at the injectors and I don't have 12 volts at the coil pack, and you know, I could check the other things, but if I'm missing at those two places, based on my previous knowledge, I'm going to look at this circuit, okay? Now, the other neat part is that we're showing here, you can see that this is inside the power distribution center. So these two pins come off from this wire, and they actually run down here to this as well, okay? And all of those are on the same circuit because that's a splice, that's a splice, that's a splice, okay? So all of that is ran off from fuse number 21, which is 20 amps, okay? Now, the reason why I really like these books, okay, is I'm going to show you guys what a Chilton's manual does for the wiring diagrams, okay? Now, I also want to point out that, again, just the thickness of, okay, this is it. That's the thickness of the wiring in this Chilton's manual, okay? And you can see here, understanding battery cables, airbag, heat, cruise, windshield. You know what? I might actually be wrong. This might actually have another one that has more. Hold on. I might have screwed this up. Suspension, brakes, body and trim. Does it have it up a little farther? Engine electrical. Okay, sorry. There's also 20 pages in the front of engine electrical wiring, which, as you can see, is a grand total of, it looks like 0 wiring diagrams. Okay, well, let's, engine mechanical, fuel system, drivability and emission controls, engine and engine overhaul, okay? So let's flip through a few of these. As you can see even here, even for the chassis electrical, there is almost no wiring diagrams. It's showing you how to take all of this stuff out and apart, okay? Yeah, neon engine schematics. Okay, so here, there you go. Index of wiring diagrams. So there's 10 wiring diagrams, okay? Diagram 3 is 1995 engine controls. Diagram 4 is 96 through 98 engine controls. And then 5 is starting, charging, cooling fan, backup lights, fuel pumps. And then from there, it's headlights, park lights, turn signals, windshield wipers, door locks, power mirrors. So you literally get, here's diagram 1, which is how to read them, your wiring symbols. So this page right here is it. That is for a 1995. So here's 96 through 98, okay? Which this should just give you updated pins and wiring colors. So these are essentially the same thing. The next page is going to have for your fuel pump relay, and that's basically it. So you get this. I didn't even realize it was this bad. You get this. That's it, right? So for my crankshaft position sensor, what even here, fuel injectors. It shows that all of these things are connected, okay? Here, splice there, right? Hot at all times fuse. That's it. Whereas I have here, and then it tells me each individual page so that I can go back to it and break it down even farther. It tells me what the wire gauge should be, the circuit number, tells me the pin number, okay? Now, it does show the pin number on the PCM. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there are little numbers in here. But like the crankshaft position sensor, it does not show you which pin is which, okay? So that's why I do not like the Chilton's manual. These things can be really super handy if you're in a pinch and you're on the road somewhere. But if you're driving a race car, like, this is the way to go, okay? Now, the other kind of neat thing that these will do, if we go back here to the back of the wiring system, which, okay, so just for example, we're still in the wiring, okay? This is the entire chassis wiring. We're still going. From here to here, okay? And you are charging system, but we would be, I don't look at the actual diagram, but half of this or more is easily just the engine stuff, okay? Now, one of the neat things that this does, though, is this is showing you the splice location, all right? So, like, these are some body ones. We'll pull up the engine one here, okay? So here's some that have to do with the engine, okay? Right strut tower, okay? Here's your right strut tower. Here's splice 117, right? This is on the other side. This is coming through. Here's where your radiator core support and all that is. And this is showing that you have splice 107, 108. You know, here's your PCM location, 108, 109, 112. So if you see, and it shows you that it's a splice, it shows you exactly where that splice is, right? It also has a couple things that I really like. This is your connector and your ground location, okay? So we're also going to flip this one back to engine stuff. So here is some that are on the engine, okay? And this is just more your general large ones, you know. So like this one does. Here's your ignition coil, camshaft, fuel injectors, right? To the fuel injectors, okay? But it shows you where all of them are. And then it's showing you here is C140, which is, you know, connector, okay? But it shows you where all the connectors are. It's showing you where this, here's a ground, okay? Here's your PDE, power distribution center. But it shows you where all of those things actually physically are, okay? Oh yeah, you guys got to see this, not me. Right. Okay. What's up, Red? Red's late, but that's okay. Now, the next part of this, which is something that I use a lot, okay? And here it's showing you the connector locations. So it'll actually tell you C161 is black, and it is near the power distribution center, figure 9, okay? But this right here, this is what I use more than anything else, is this section right here. And this is your connector pinouts, okay? Because I'm going to assume most of the time that the wires are where they need to be. So for me, it's a case of the way I work on cars, the way that I work on these Neons, I know a lot of the stuff in the wiring diagrams to know, you know, I know where all the 12-volt stuff is connected to, right? So I know what should and shouldn't have power. But what I don't know is what pin on the PCM is for the fuel injectors. Or I might not know. So let's see. We'll do a motor one here, or an engine one, right? So like here's for the alternator. Here's for the fuel tank, okay? If we come back over here, you know, we got dome lamp. They're in alphabetical order. But so here is the crankshaft position sensor, okay? So now I can look and see and make sure, okay, which one of these do I need to test for 8 volt? It's going to say it's pin 1. It shows me the connector as I'm looking at it on the harness, pin number 1, pin number 3, okay? So I know that that's the 8 volt supply is pin number 1. And so I can come in here and I can see, okay, yep, there's an orange wire in there. I probe it and nope, I don't have 8 volts. I only have 3 volts, right? Sensor grounds, and then crankshaft position sensor signal. We'll get more into, we're going to do, after we do how to fix it and everything, we will get more into how each sensor kind of operates and what those different things mean. We'll do that one. That one may or may not wait a little bit longer too, just because, you know, being able to rewire your car is nice. That's part of, you know, this, right? But I look at this more than anything. Like I said, I don't use this specific book, so that's why these pages aren't very dirty. But if I come back here, and this has everything. Here's your left fog lamp. Here's your left front door lock motor, right? If I keep coming, so here is C1, powertrain control module C1. So this is the one of the two connectors on the PCM, okay? So I can look and see as I come through here, right? This is how, what we're getting into now is how you can best make a full standalone harness, okay? And this is a big way that you can do it. If I'm coming through here and I am looking at these wires and I'm looking at what each one does, because again, we have what cavity number it is, what circuit it is, and the first, the letter, which I didn't realize this until I was just looking at this. I want to show you guys this real quick. This is something I learned today, just to show you guys I'm not inflappable, okay? I did learn something while I was glancing at this book that I should have known that I didn't. Okay. All right, you guys can hear me. So I have no battery. This is what I've been using. This is my camera setup here turned out to look at the book. And I don't know why it's all of a sudden is working now. Hold on, this is going to be an issue. Maybe. There we go. Okay. Oh, I can do this. I can remove there. All right. Well, the good news is that this is working for the moment. So I will let you guys know what had happened there. I'm going to turn my camera just so I can talk to you for a moment. What happened was I was using this camera, and apparently the battery's dead in it. So I apologize for that. Hopefully, yeah. I mean, just as many people are here as they were before. So my phone's at 80%. As long as the signal remains, we're going to keep doing this, but it is going to get a little bit shakier. But at least now I can look at this thing in the proper direction. So basically what I was trying to show you guys, what I learned by looking at this, wherever the page went that had the had the wiring diagram specifics, okay? What I learned was that there is actually a code for all of the circuits. I should have known this. This is something I should have known. So I think it's right here by the power distribution center. So yes, okay. So basically, the letter in each circuit corresponds with a function inside of the car. So as you can see here, okay, it is like battery feed is circuit A. So if we come down here, like K is powertrain control module. You know, if you come down, we got suspension and steering, speed control, audio systems, right? So as you get back here, you know, in any of the circuits, right? So this is circuit A142, which is battery, which would be your B positive. Okay. Yeah. Also red. That is a good joke. Okay. Yeah. You guys can still hear me, okay, right? It's just doing something goofy here. Okay, yeah, you should. Okay. Okay. It's giving me a goofy warning, right? Which is freaking me out. Now, we got all the way back here, connector ground locations, connector pinouts, okay? Also, so this has pages that are glued into it. That's because there was an update and these pages were added in to fix that update, okay? Now, if we come over here to the PCM connector, okay? One hot for the HEI, one hot for the solenoid, big hot to the starter, all wired up, ready to go. Yes. Yes. Okay. The way that you can use these really, really effectively is that if I come in here and I want to make my own standalone harness, as I come in here, I can look at the pin connector on the PCM and I can say, okay, so this one is for circuit V37 and it's for the speed control switch signal. I don't need cruise control, so I can remove that wire. I can take that right out. Okay. If I come down here, I need the sensor grounds. I need the 8-volt supply. I don't need the power steering pressure switch sense. Anything that says fused B positive or ground, you want. I also need the idle air control valve. I want to keep that ground. The downstream heated oxygen sensor signal. I'm not going to run the downstream oxygen sensor, so I don't need that part. Ambient temperature sensor signal. That one I'm probably going to want to keep. Generator lamp driver. So what that does is that turns the alternator light on in the gauge cluster. I don't need that one. I do need the idle air control valve. So then I switch over here to the next page. And this is a continuation here of the last page. And then this is a continuation of C2 for the powertrain control module. So this is both, you know, all of them. But as again, you go through, I need the 5-volt supply. I don't need the stop lamp switch sense. I don't need my AC compressor stuff. SCI transmit, you do need. That's data link connector. Vehicle speed sensor signal, I only need that. Now, I say that a Neon doesn't need this. A Neon does not need the vehicle speed sensor signal. Some of your cars might, okay? That's where knowing what these sensors do and how they're related helps, okay? Automatic shutdown relay control, you need that. Duty cycle evap purge solenoid control, I don't need that. But you can just go down the list, okay? And as long as you know what each thing does, right? Torque converter clutch solenoid control. I don't have that on a manual trans, so I don't need that. There is a good chance you'll see that has that double line there. It actually denotes that it's for an automatic. Okay. I think my camera's a little dirty. Just a second. Well, that's slightly better, I guess. Okay. But that denotes that is for an automatic or manual. Those are just different if it's a clutch setup or if it is a like the torque converter setup. Okay. Which one of the O2 sensors do you want to keep? You want to keep the upstream. Okay. Think of your exhaust as a river. You want the one that's first, so the one that's upstream. Okay. But I can come through here as I'm working on these wiring diagrams, as I'm working on trying to figure out how, like, everything that is wrong, like I'm trying to figure out the wiring. Do I have 12 volts here or here or here? I can come right here to this power, the wiring diagram for this, and I can see, okay, man, okay, so ignition coil number 1 and 3 driver. Okay, so that's the gray wire. All right, so I should have continuity between those two. Oh, I don't. That's why that cylinder is not working, right? Again, the Chilton manual's down there where it belongs. There was one page, and it doesn't show you the circuit number. Okay, it doesn't show you the splice's location or anything like that. Right? It is not going to show you. It just tells you the pin number. Well, C1, you'd think these would be the opposite, but C1 is pin number 41 through pin number 80. C2 is pin number 1 through pin number 40, right? The Chilton's manual isn't going to show you those things, right? Okay, so we are going to slight lesson here real quick, and this is not to sound mean, okay? Red. It's not to sound mean. Your O2 sensors, the two of them, the upstream controls fuel, the downstream checks to make sure that it's not the same after the catalytic converter. Your downstream only matters. Its entire job is to analyze the gas coming out, to know that the catalytic converter is working and that it's working properly. It just reads the difference between the first sensor and the second sensor to make sure that something is in between them and that it's doing something. Okay. Your upstream O2 sensor is the one that is going to adjust your fuel air mixture based on what it reads. Now, oftentimes, so like these neons, they don't read that sensor at wide open throttle, because an O2 sensor, a wideband O2 sensor, reads basically from 0 volts to 5 volts, and it, as the mixture changes, the voltage changes. Okay, not a lot of OEM computers have that, especially if they're naturally aspirated. Most of them have a narrow band sensor, which basically has 1 volt. I forget the exact voltage, but it has 1 volt if it's richer than 14.7. And it has 4 volts if it's leaner than 14.7, or vice versa voltages. But it basically is a light switch. It just goes from one to the other to the other. And the idea is that your computer wants to see that switch happen X amount of times per second, and then it knows that it is just straddling stoichiometric, which is for idling and cruising. Okay. At wide open throttle, the computer cannot, that sensor cannot switch fast enough to tell it that it's at the perfect ratio, which it wouldn't be the right ratio for underpower. So if you have a narrow band O2 sensor, odds are when you get wide open throttle, it just ignores the O2 sensor anyway. That's why on our race cars, it works really well, because without having one, because it affects idle and it affects part throttle cruising. It does not affect wide open throttle. So that's why you want the upstream O2 sensor, and that's why it usually doesn't matter if you delete it. So what manual do you have? So Jason, this is the actual, let me switch you guys back. This is a 1997 service manual for a Dodge Neon. Okay. You can get these, eBay honestly is about the best bet. If you have a local Dodge dealer, so like for me, local Dodge dealer, they only keep so many factory service manuals. So they might want to get rid of the 95 through 99, right? So I might be able to pick up the full set of these for cheap from my local Dodge dealer, right? If you have, I don't care what your car is. I literally do not. I don't care what manufacturer. I don't care what model. There is something like this for it. Okay. Now, it might not be a paper version. It might be an online only version. It might be a CD version, something like that. But this exists for your car. This is put out by the factory for every car they make. Okay. Some of them, we have some 1995 ones that have supplements. So they have ones that are also have ABS system stuff in it, that also have like collision stuff, right? Oh, that's so just as a, this is why you should get a factory service manual. Okay. So here's the brakes. So here it actually shows you, right? You can go through and all that, but it actually gives you the specs for things. So like, here's how they're actuated, right? But here's your master cylinder bore, stroke, and the split for it. So it shows that it has, for the non-ABS, it has a 21 millimeter by 32.6 millimeter bore and stroke. Okay. And they're both split 50-50 as far as displacement goes. The master cylinder fluid outlet ports,
For your ABS versions, you have a 3/8 24 and a 7/16 24. For non-ABS, your primary inboard and outboard, you have 7/16 24, which those are going to be your front. Your secondary inboard and outboard are 3/8 23. Those are your rear, or vice versa. I forget exactly, right? But it's a SAE 45-degree flare. The booster is this type with these mounting studs, right? Like this, all of this, your brake pedal ratio is a 3.28. Okay. Here's the torque fasteners for your brake system. Okay. Here's the special tools that you will need if you want to work on the brake system, how they describe it. Okay. Here's proportioning valve indication. Here's how to read it. Here's your ABS stuff. Okay. This is for every part of your car. We're still in the brakes, right? We're still in the brakes. Okay. Here's for your clutch. So it shows you the different parts, the different pieces, right? Service diagnostics, if the clutch is grabbing, here's what they're saying that it could be. Here's the possible causes. Here's how you fix it, right? These are made for technicians to be able to diagnose and fix the automobiles that they are working on, okay? Every single part of this is going to have, here's for your clutch. Here's the torque specs for your clutch, right? Cooling system. So here's how it shows you, right? Shows you the engine, radiator, the heater, okay? And if you'll notice, it goes from here up into your heater core and then back down into the block, into the water pump, right? It's so that it can bypass that with the thermostat, okay? Sorry, we're working on one of those. But it's showing you the different radiators. It's showing you how a radiator cap is made, right? Temperature gauge reads high or low. Here's possible causes, okay? Then we get into, and again here, here's the torque spec for everything, right? The other really neat thing that this has in it, I might have to find it, so body, okay? So this is something that you guys might find useful. I don't know if it's in the front or back of the body part, so we might have to look. Body components, seats, might be in the back of tires and wheels, might be in the back. So there's something really, really neat that happens in these with the body that is really handy if you are on your own and you're trying to figure out if your car is bent, okay? Just a second, we'll get there. Missed it. I must have missed it. Now I gotta find it. So somewhere in here, okay, these glue-in pages are screwing me up. Somewhere in here is actually a book or a for where the body should be. Okay, general components, service, paint, seats. But it will have. Man, now I feel stupid. I should have looked for this earlier. But basically, there is a diagram in here that shows you the dimensions of wherever how everything should be. So where your frame rails should be, where they shouldn't be, the distances to it and stuff. I thought it was towards the back of this chapter, but we're into the heating and air conditioning, so no. All right, so I couldn't find that one for you. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna turn this camera back here. Just that's the other one. I have to pick my individual cameras with this software. So I just wanted to read. So needs to sensor manual. And it does actually use the lower downstream sensor for anytime that you see commands around 14.7. You shouldn't really delete the lower unless it's tuned out. It also uses to tell the health of the upstream. It generates an offset number for calculations. Yay, Nissan. Okay, so he's not wrong. Like, Bobby, you're not wrong. If your car uses a wideband O2 sensor, I have no doubt that Nissan would do that. That the lower stream is used for more than just that. Okay. Now, I'm just curious because I've never messed with this on a Nissan. If you remove the cat, does it actually cause issues? Because obviously it's meant to see the difference between the two, like the catalytic converter's working. So, but I imagine if you tune it, you could tune that out. But yeah, the Dodge ones are a sledgehammer, or at least in a neon, right? A lot of newer cars, especially turbocharged ones, do have a wideband O2 sensor, and they do use it for fueling corrections. But a lot of the older stuff, it doesn't. So that is a very make and model specific thing. So I'm not going to lie to you guys. That is bothering me that I couldn't find that diagram. Now, the other thing, too, is if you ever are using one of these factory service manuals, you can look at the page number based on anything, right? So shift levers, shift rails, okay? Like, this has a very, very, very comprehensive index for what stuff is where, okay? So we're actually going to look for body. Body. Code components. Dimension standard. Intro to -3. That's not all the way up here in the front, is it? Like here. General information. Bolt markings and torque values. Okay. No. Okay. But you have everything in here. So the engines, it's showing you, here's where your crankshaft end plate should be. Here is your main bearing clearances. Here's your connecting rod bearing clearances, your crankshaft journal sizes, right? Here's your piston ring. Okay. Side bearing clearances, like it, and it shows you step by step how to, like, this is removal. Okay. But it's going to show you, here's how you're going to do the timing on it, right? Here's the tools that you need to do these special things, right? Here's the assembly, okay? So, like, here's the front of the engine. Here's the torque sequence, okay, for installing the bed plate bolts, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, right? And the dowels are indicate the 95s had a little bit different situation going, but indicates dowel location, right? Main bearing caps, bed plate torque sequence, like it shows you how to apply the lubrication. Okay. So factory service manuals are way better than just wiring diagrams. So cat throws a cat efficiency DTTC, doesn't cause an issue. It just turns off the monitor. Basically the same thing as if you delete the DTC. Okay. Yeah, Dodge get grumpy if they don't have the cat in there, right? So I guess let me actually grab this and bring it back up here. Did you guys have any questions about wiring diagrams? We've sort of covered most of it, and at this point, I'm just trying to sell you guys on buying a factory service manual. So, could a man take a wideband sensor in place of a narrowband for better performance? No, you would actually go the opposite way, Red, if it was possible. So the reason for that is that the computer's only looking for that switch. It's not looking for a wide band of a signal. So it wouldn't know what to do with it even if you gave it to it, right? Whatever it came with is what you should put in it, right? Problem is you need to know what the factory named what you want to find, because sometimes it doesn't match what the rest of the world calls it. Yes. Yes, for sure. More than once I've had that happen. If you space the lower downstream to try to fool the ECM, then yes, because you messed its data, it will make it run richer and could even cause a DTC for the upstream sensor instead. Yeah, that's now. But if you tune them, it just doesn't. So, but yeah, the service manual. In all seriousness, the service manual might be a PDF, and you might need to print off the pages that are important to you. It might be a physical book. and it might be, if you have a newer car, it might be expensive. If you are racing, so like if you have a Honda and if you got an OBD2 car, but you're putting in OBD1 wiring type of stuff, it might be worth getting the manual that corresponds with the wiring that you have, right? So there are multiple ways to get a factory service manual like that. So, all right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I might call this one a night tonight, guys and gals. Is the part store sensor good replacement, or would you suggest the OEM part for replacement? It all depends on part store stuff is good or bad. It all really depends on. OEM is usually like brand, like in the car OEM is usually the best that you can get, just because they have to last a long time. Bosch for me tends to be a really good sensor, but it really just depends on if you buy the AutoZone version or the Advanced Auto version. Yeah, it might not be that good. But if you go to Dodge and you buy a sensor there, that's not guaranteeing that it's the best quality. So yeah. And yes, I turned that off, and its target's used for the lower to something it will never target. Basically force it to just up or all up. Okay, that makes sense. But anyways, guys and gals, used OEM parts from your local salvage yard. Sometimes O2 sensors a little hard to do it, but head over to Union City Speed Shop, Union City, Michigan. We do that all the time. Crank sensors, cam sensors, TPS sensors, stuff like that. We keep the factory ones because they're oftentimes a lot better quality. So I don't think I've ever taken a used O2 sensor off something, just because usually they're kind of frozen in there. But yeah, it's absolutely a way to go. So, but that's going to be it for tonight, guys and gals. We will go live tomorrow. Tomorrow will be just kind of some fun talking kind of thing. I don't know. It might be from the drive down there. It might be from dinner. Might be something. But tomorrow we are just headed down to Indianapolis. So yeah, then the real fun begins. So tomorrow will be, and maybe we'll go live a couple times tomorrow. Maybe we'll go live and just kind of talk some BS. And then once we get to the hotel, maybe we'll go live and do a PRI kind of intro update again. So, and Thursday, the fun begins. So thank you all for being here. We'll see you guys tomorrow.